So, the CIO thinks they're right, the CFO thinks they're right, and the company is the one that still loses. It's not a personality problem. It's a governance failure. And this is the most misunderstood failure in modern leadership teams. CIO and CFO conflict, it's not personal, but it is structural. And why is that? Because one optimizes capability, one optimizes capital. Both are doing their job, but they are measured on incompatible outcomes. So alignment meetings multiply, decks grow longer, conversations become more diplomatic, but nothing actually aligns. Because alignment without forcing function is nothing more than theater. You're negotiating positions instead of defining trade-offs. And when trade-offs are undefined, every decision becomes a compromise, every compromise delays execution, and every delay costs more than the original decision ever would have. Hi, I'm Jason Hahn. I've lived this tension for 18 years. As a global CIO with a budget responsibility north of $150 million across multiple industries, both private and public, I've sat in rooms where IT leadership presented a resilience investment, and the CFO heard discretionary spend, where the CFO asked for ROI clarity, and all the CIO heard was distrust of their technical judgment. Same words, different languages, no translation layer. Today I work with executive teams where this breakdown has calcified into cultural norms. And here's what I've learned. Alignment fails when no one defines the trade-offs. Not because leaders are incompetent, but because the governance structure never forced the question. Because here's what actually happens in the meetings. The CIO proposes a $12 million infrastructure modernization project. The business case is built on resilience, reduced outage risk, faster recovery time, better security posture, all true, all necessary. The CFO sees $12 million with no revenue attachment. They see a cost center asking for more capacity when current utilization is still unclear. Also true, also necessary to question. So the CIO adds a slide on business continuity. The CFO adds a question about cloud alternatives. The CIO explains technical debt. The CFO explains margin pressure. They're both solving real problems, but they're solving different problems with the same dollars. And this is what happens next. A follow-up meeting gets scheduled. The CIO brings in more data. The CFO brings in sharper questions. Both are trying to build alignment, but the battle continues, and alignment is still not happening. Why? Because they're negotiating from positions instead of defining outcomes. The CIO is defending resilience. The CFO is defending capital discipline. But no one is asking, what are we actually choosing between? Is it speed versus cost, resilience versus margin, scale versus control? If those trade-offs are not named explicitly, the conversation loops, the decision stalls, and execution slows. Not because of ego, not because of misalignment, because governance is missing. Here is the cost no one tracks, though. And this is very important, because I've seen this happen. While the CIO and CFO are locked in alignment theater, the business, they keep moving forward. So sales starts buying solutions that they need. Operations starts signing SaaS contracts. Marketing starts purchasing and using solutions that they need. And that's how shadow IT grows. Not because users are reckless, because governance created that vacuum. When leadership takes 6 months, the business stops waiting. And when the business stops waiting, the CIO loses control and the CFO loses all visibility. And that is the real cost of misalignment. Not that the decision got delayed. The hundreds of decisions that happened without any governance. Now, let me say something that will make CIOs a bit uncomfortable. This alignment failure is not evenly distributed. It is not the CFO's responsibility to understand technology. It is not the CEO's responsibility to understand infrastructure. And it's certainly not the board's responsibility to decode technical architecture. But it is absolutely IT's leadership responsibility to understand how the business makes money, to speak the language of capital, to translate technical necessity into financial outcome. If a CIO cannot explain an investment in terms the CFO recognizes as economically rational, that is not a CFO comprehension problem. That is a CIO translation problem. The CFO is not blocking progress because they don't understand technology. They're blocking proposals because the business case just does not connect to business economics. And when IT leaders expect the business to learn their language instead of learning the business language, alignment becomes impossible. Not difficult, impossible. Because you're asking the capital owner to approve spend they cannot defend. And no competent CFO will do that, nor should they. Now, in another briefing, I will talk about why every IT leader, every IT employee, from CIO all the way to the operators, must understand financials and how the company makes money. It's something I require from every team that I lead. Now, here's the distinction that matters. Alignment is not agreement. Agreement's an outcome. Alignment is a structure. Effective CIO and CFO alignment requires 3 questions before any material spend. The first one, what are we choosing to optimize? Not what are we buying, but what are the outcomes we are prioritizing? Is it speed to market, cost reduction, risk transfer, competitive position? Pick one. If the answer is all of them, then there's no strategy. Second, what downside are we accepting? Every optimization has a cost. Faster time to market means higher run costs. Lower cost means slower innovation. Better resilience means margin pressure. You name the trade-off. If there's no trade-off, the business case is nothing but fiction. And third, who owns the outcome financially? Not IT, not finance. One business operator, one business owner who will stand in front of the board and defend that result. Because if ownership is shared, accountability, it's absent. When those 3 questions are forced before approval, alignment becomes structural. When they are optional, alignment becomes nothing more than negotiation. And negotiations do not scale. Let me give you an example of what I was brought into. It was a financial services firm, 1,600 or so employees. The CIO and CFO have been locked in alignment failure for close to 18 months. Projects were delayed, morale was collapsing, board confidence was eroding. The CIO kept proposing, the CFO would keep questioning, the decisions would keep getting delayed every quarter. So we reframed every initiative above the discretionary threshold around explicit trade-offs, not business cases, trade-offs. A cloud migration proposal became speed versus cost control. We are choosing the speed to support market expansion. We are accepting a 5% higher run cost for 3 years. And the VP of sales owns the revenue outcome. A security investment became a risk transfer versus margin. We are reducing breach exposure by $40 million. We are accepting a 2% margin compression. And the chief risk officer owns that exposure reduction. Once trade-offs were named, decisions accelerated. Not because everyone agreed, but because they understood that they were choosing between rational decisions and just misinformation. The CIO stopped defending technical decisions. The CFO stopped interrogating every cost. They started debating business trade-offs. And business trade-offs have owners. And within 90 days, the backlog pretty much cleared. Not because they approved everything, because we killed what did not survive, those 3 questions, and funded what did. That structure is what governance produces. CIO and CFO alignment breaks when capital decisions lack forcing functions, when trade-offs are negotiated instead of defined, when ownership is shared instead of singular. Governance restores alignment by forcing clarity before money even moves. Not agreement, clarity. Clarity about what you are optimizing for. What are you sacrificing? And who is accountable? And that leads to the upcoming and final briefing in this ROI series. Why board confidence collapses even when every function is performing well. Please subscribe, and thank you.